Hello, good afternoon. How you doing? It's just Rach from Kittypedia. I hope you're having a beautiful Saturday afternoon. Today we're speaking on a very thought-provoking topic of human emotions, and I guess it's that constant pressure that we sort of have of attaining happiness as, I guess, the be-all and end-all. We all want to be happy, of course, but it's something that is very difficult and probably unhealthy for us to be able to achieve as a consistent and a constant state of mind. And this is something that we get, I guess, pressures indirectly from the media, I guess, as being something that we should always be in this frame of mind. Of course, as a disclaimer, we don't discourage anyone from making a positive change to be happier, as it's very, very important to be able to be happy. But we're simply discussing today and sharing a useful skill in the world of emotional intelligence. This skill will help us as parents, as adults, as carers, as grandparents, and is proven on a psychological level to better regulate our state of mind and help soothe our brains. Even just saying the words soothe our brains, something that I sort of just go, oh, it's like a nice cold shower. And today we're really honoured to be joined by Sam Spafford from she's principal psychologist from Positive Mindworks on this topic. How are you doing, Sam?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
We're really, really honoured to be in partnership with Sam, and each month Sam provides fantastic articles to Kittypedia. This month's article was titled, What is it to be human, big humans and kids alike? So we published that not too long ago. But Sam, first of all, could you give us, for someone that hasn't read the article, just give us a little bit of an overview on what the article is about?
Sure. So the article touches on a subject that's actually really important, I think, given where we're at today in society and the message that we are given from media, which is that happiness is within our control and we should all strive to be happy all the time. And although there's obviously a beautiful element to that message that, we do have control over our well-being and we can take positive steps, that we often end up in this struggle where we think we should be happy all the time, that there's something wrong with us if we're not feeling happy. And
yeah, that's such a true, if we're not happy that there's something wrong with us, why aren't we happy?
This is it. And so it's often something that I talk to people about is dealing with accepting that happiness all the time is actually not what we're striving for.
Yeah, and you mentioned in the article also that there are 8, or how many primary emotions?
Look, it's a complicated question, so depends on which researcher that you refer to, but I think we can sort of summarise that there are 8, but look, anywhere between 6 and 10. But I think the really important thing to emphasise is that whether you're saying it's 6, 8, 9 or 10, about 75% of those emotions we label as negative emotions.
The majority of them?
The majority.
So of all of the human emotions that, as human beings that we have, the majority of them are naturally negative.
This is it. And
right.
There's actually an evolutionary purpose for that. It makes evolutionary sense because our survival depended on us assuming something was dangerous or scary in order to protect ourselves.
Right.
So our body is geared up to do just what it's doing, and it's doing a wonderful job.
Right. So we've got 3 key questions that we're going to be asking today, and we might sort of just get straight into the questions if that's okay.
Yeah.
So the first question we have is, aren't we all striving to be happy? You sound like you're suggesting this is not helpful.
Right, so of course, I think you prefaced it well a moment ago, Rach, when you said about taking responsibility and making positive change in life is a wonderful thing. But really, the trouble that we often see is that when somebody's trying to be happy all the time, that's when it's the struggle. If you can imagine a Chinese finger trap where you've got sort of a finger trap on your fingers. Have you ever seen a Chinese finger
I
trap?
think movies or something.
And the more you try and pull your fingers apart, the tighter the trap becomes.
Ouch.
And this is the way we, sort of the metaphor that we use for negative feelings, is the more we try not to have negative feelings, actually the more you'll encounter they're very sticky and hard to shake off.
Really?
Really. So
why is that?
If you try not to feel anxious, what are you going to be feeling?
You feel anxious about the fact that you're trying not to feel anxious.
And you're maybe even beating yourself up and starting to feel stressed or depressed about the fact that you're feeling anxious.
Yeah.
So we try to encourage people to think about feelings as something that's like the weather. It's going to sometimes be cloudy and stormy, and other times it's going to be sunny, but we don't have control over the weather. The main thing is that it changes from moment to moment. A negative feeling might move in, and it's going to move out and make way for another feeling that follows. If we can accept that to be human is to experience good and bad, we label them good and bad, is to be a full human being with a full human life, is to experience the whole range of human emotions.
So, as we were saying before, so we've identified, or researchers have identified, a range between 6 to 10. So some of the key primary human emotions are anger, fear, sadness, surprise, trust, and anticipation. So naturally, it's not healthy to be happy all the time. The rest of our human existence is going to be filled by these other emotions.
Exactly.
Which the majority of them are negative. So understanding that is actually understanding to be human is actually okay to be in some form of a negative frame of mind, or in a fearful or comprising state of mind.
It is normal. This is the thing. And it actually shows that we care about something. So the moment, it's like two sides of the same coin. You can't get rid of negative feelings without getting rid of positive ones.
Yeah.
You can't love a child without also feeling fearful when you send them out into the world and hope that they do okay. It's love and fear. These are two sides of the same coin.
So do you find in a lot of your work then, when you're speaking to, do you call them patients, or what
clients,
do you call them? Clients that people are wanting and worried and trying to understand how and why they're not constantly happy. Is that that's a pretense?
Absolutely. But I think typically the concerns that we face when somebody comes to see, say, a practice like ours, is that there are certain behaviours that they've started. You know, we all have a natural tendency to try and fix our own problems. This is what it is to be human. We're wonderful problem solvers. And so if there's a negative feeling there, and we don't want that negative feeling there, we often find that people will start, particular behaviours to try to move away from that negative feeling. So I mentioned briefly to you before we were chatting, and I mentioned that some common ones are, eating, emotional eating, shopping, drugs and alcohol, distraction, television. We're just moving away from that negative feeling by creating a space, and often it's the behaviours that we engage in to try and move away from that feeling that will bring someone to, say, speak to a therapist or a psychologist.
It's a very confrontational thing for someone to have the self-awareness to be able to sit in that moment and not then, as you said, pull back and then go and fill that void with shopping or some other shiny thing that's going to try and make them feel happy, because they think that's what I should be feeling. I should be feeling happy all the time. For some other reason, I'm feeling one of these other key emotions, but I need to go and do something so I can feel happy. Is that right? This is it.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, because the media is constantly telling us, and or society is constantly telling us, we should be happy all the time. If you're having that moment when you feel uncomfortable, it's almost like wearing an old jumper or a scratchy jumper, isn't it? That you sort of just. But in actual fact, would it be right to say in those moments we're going through some form of personal growth because it's uncomfortable?
Absolutely. So this is the thing: is negative emotions are telling us, they're giving us a message. They're telling us what we care about. They're telling us to pay attention to something, and they're telling us what we need to do in order to get back on track. If there's some adjustment that we need to make. The big thing is that differentiating feelings from behaviour. So you can have an overwhelming sense of sadness, anger, but what you do with that that's under your control. You can't change the feeling, but you can change how you react to that behaviour, to that feeling.
So let's say today I'm sitting somewhere and I'm saying to myself, well, I should be happy. I've got my health and I've got all of these, and I've got gratitude. I've got gratitude for all of these things. Why aren't I happy? Right. I've got my health. I've got all of these wonderful things in my life. So I have this self-awareness, and I'll say to myself, I am not now going to go and push back and then fill that up and say, I'm going to go shopping, or I'm going to go and do something else to make myself happy. I say to myself, I'm not in a state of happiness, but I'm one of these other 9 or however many key emotions.
Yeah.
What should somebody do? What should they feel?
Okay, so there's a couple of tips I was going to suggest here. So The first one, I mean, I talk briefly about this in the article. It's called Noticing It and Naming It. And
noticing and naming it. Yes.
So how often are we on automatic pilot, right? Where we are up and out the door, we're in the car, we're this, that, we're everywhere.
All day, every day.
And when did we stop and say, how am I feeling today? Just how am I feeling in my body? How am I feeling emotionally? We don't pay attention to how we're feeling.
At all.
And when you're not paying attention, it's not that that feeling is not affecting you, it's that you're blocking it out and you're not aware of the effect that it's having. So in micro ways, that feeling is going to be affecting what you do without you consciously paying attention.
So is it having the self-awareness to be able to identify and take that moment and breathe?
This is it. So mindfulness, it's just taking a moment. You know, it doesn't have to be sat, you know, in a yogic position out on a peaceful lake. It can
be nice.
It would be nice. But we can just take, you know, 3 calming breaths at the traffic lights. You know, breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth. And just do a little body scan. You know, by body scan, I mean just pay attention to the body, kind of scroll through the body and see if you can get a sense of what's going on in the body. Because the interesting thing is, all feelings, emotional feelings, leave a footprint on the body. There's some sort of tension, heat, warmth, movement, some sensation in the body that accompanies the emotional feeling. So if you're struggling to put your finger on the emotion, find in your body where it's sitting, find on what's going out in your body.
Mine usually sits in the back of my neck.
There you go.
So what is it?
Mine's a throat thing.
Is it?
Yeah. A bit of anxiety in my throat.
Yeah.
So back of the neck, is it tension? Is that?
Just a little bit.
Yeah. You've all got it. It's normal. It's okay. This is the thing.
So in that moment when we identify we're not in a state of absolute blissful happiness as we think that we should be all day, every day, it's not healthy. We identify and we think, okay, it's okay to not be in that frame of mind. I'm going to take a moment. I'm going to just take a breath, as you said. Breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth, and identify.
Yeah, so this is the next thing. So we've covered the noticing part, which is awareness. So noticing is awareness. You've actually got to slow down and pay attention to notice. The next thing is naming it. Now this is really interesting because there's actually some great science research out there for anyone who wants to kind of do a bit of reading on this, is that they're by picking the right word, articulating how we're feeling, we are actually having a physiological effect on the part of our brain that's active without overwhelming negative emotion, and we're soothing that part of our brain, and we're dampening that neurochemical
This is a soothing part. So if you want to soothe your brain, this is what we need to do.
I
want to soothe my brain. What do I need to do?
So I often recommend, it's a chart, and you can get this, there's an app actually called Mood Meter.
Mood Meter.
I think maybe a couple of dollars off free, I'm not sure, but there's probably other ones out there. Or even just Google online and find an emotion chart. And it is amazing how limited sometimes our vocabulary is for how we're feeling. I feel angry, sad, happy. There's so many hundreds of emotions.
So what we're doing at the moment, we're actually naming the emotion.
Naming it, yeah.
Okay.
By picking the right name, by putting your finger on the right name, you are not only validating and acknowledging how you feel, but you're physiologically soothing that part of the brain.
So we soothe our brain by acknowledging what the emotion actually is. That's how we're soothing the brain.
This is it, yeah. Notice it. Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? So such a simple technique, such a simple strategy, you know, and you can put this emotion chart on the fridge at home. You know, there's nothing wrong with having it there and seeing it and having the family kind of pay attention to it as well.
It's funny, in preparation, and that was one thing that I was talking about with my partner earlier on, and he said to have a visual book or a visual chart of some description, and especially with children, so in teaching them, and would you say this is useful for...
Absolutely.
So this is useful for both adults and for children.
Yeah. So you can make it more pictorial with children, you know, you can use faces so that they can help to, you know, to see emotions and learn some vocabulary around how they're feeling.
Yeah. So in order to get that chart or to be able to get a pictorial chart, where would people go then, do you think?
I think you can absolutely email me and I'll be happy to send you some information on that. So I don't know if you can maybe put that in the comments section. It's my email address.
Definitely.
And otherwise you're welcome to do, I'm sure a Google search will bring up lots of evidence of that as well, lots of research to look at.
So you're saying the best way to be able to assist with soothing our brain is to be able to identify what the emotion is and to name it.
Exactly, yeah. So,
And that a chart would be able to identify both for children being a pictorial chart and or for adults
yeah,
to be able to be another chart, but that you can help them with finding
absolutely.
these charts.
Yeah.
And the last question we have
Yeah.
today is, how can we help, of course, our children with noticing and naming our emotions?
Yeah, so there's a couple of points that I wanted to make with this one because it's an interesting question. I've just spent a lot of time with my niece who's 2.5, and she's just full of really dramatic changes. You know, one minute she's happy, the next minute she's just disastrously sad. And it's
I say the terrible twos, hey?
the terrible twos. It's really interesting to use. It's really helpful to use emotional vocabulary with children. So this is, you're feeling upset. You're feeling upset that such and such can't play today. Using that emotional language and making sure that they are hearing that it's okay to feel that way, and reflecting that back. You know, when you're seeing the behaviour that symbolises that a child is upset, is using the feeling word and helping them to learn that. There's a couple of other things you can also do. So this is an interesting one. I had a dentist appointment the other day, and it's not my favourite time going to the dentist. And
I hear this really quite often with dentists. It's one of those things that I don't think anybody likes going to the dentist.
This is it.
The poor dentists.
But I was thinking, to say, if say I had a child there with me, I would be saying, I'm feeling anxious going to the dentist. How do you feel going to the dentist? And depending on what age the child is, that can be a really helpful question to start to open up that conversation about feelings and make this something that we can talk about. It's not something that needs to be tucked away and ignored, that we can talk about, and it's okay to see a parent or a family member have negative feelings.
So I guess it's two parts with educating children. It's both noticing their emotions and then naming or giving that what would you say, like a title or a topic, or what would you like a tag, or what would you say, like a label? That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's
find the word.
It's the other thing is, I think it's really important. We often, as parents, we're caught in this sort of struggle between wanting to protect children from negative feelings and at the same time wanting to help them to know that it's okay to have them.
Yeah.
And from my experience, I think what I can see is that if you've got an overwhelming feeling happening for you as a parent or family member, then allow that intensity to pass. And you've got to do your own stuff on that. But then when you're ready, then it's time to share that, with little ones and to talk about it. And what they can see then in that conversation is, Mum or whoever it was feeling really stressed this morning, and they can hear you talking about it, and they can see your behaviour as calm, and that defines the difference between I can feel this intense emotion, but I have a choice what I do about that. Behaviour and emotion are not fused together.
That's interesting. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So this is the thing with children, and really what we're helping them to do is in emotion regulation is to think about, I feel this way. What do I do with that without, being the terrible twos where all the emotions are put out there into the world so dramatically? It's learning, this is how I feel. What do I do then? How do I react to that? How's my behavior affected by how I feel? And having that conscious space, it's something we learn as adults. We struggle with it too. It's what it is to be human. Having this space between how we feel and how we react gives us conscious control. So we can choose the best path forward. We can choose the best action that's going to bring us the outcome that we want.
Yeah. I guess, and with children too, just going back to that, and you're speaking about a 2-year-old as an example, 90% of a child's brain development happens by the age of 5. So would you say this is even more important to be doing between the 0 to 5 age, because then we're sort of, would you say, conditioning or patterning their brain to be able to understand this naming and this identification of their emotions and regulating?
Absolutely. So seeing that family members have negative emotions, but seeing that they can still control themselves while those negative emotions are there, that they can choose their behavioural response. They
can choose their behavioural response.
This is it.
So that it's okay to not be happy. It's okay to have a negative emotion or feeling, but to understand, A, by naming it, but B, that it's okay to be able to be in that space. It's a comfortable space.
Yeah, this is it.
What a world we would live in if everybody, as a 2-year-old and 3-year-old and 4-year-old had this
Yeah.
already just conditioned in their brain from a young age.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that just be wonderful?
Yeah, I mean, of course it would, but I guess it's pretty neat to see the intensity of the emotions for young people, and to see that gradually change over time, and to see how they can start to learn some vocabulary and learn ways of operating in the world. It's a pretty fascinating thing to be human.
It is, but as you said, as an adult, as a parent, a grandparent, or a carer, we need to be able to understand this within ourselves before we can naturally teach it as well.
This is it.
Yeah.
And give ourselves a break, because we're going to muck it up. Let's put that out there at the very beginning, that we're absolutely going to muck this up. So don't try and be perfect.
It's okay not to be perfect.
Yeah.
And I think that's a pressure that most parents really feel, and some of the other things we were just discussing just before we went live was also that just going back to, I guess, the start of it is the fact that if we were constantly in, which we think we should be, in a constant sort of happy state of mind, this would be releasing endorphins, including serotonin, which would constantly be up. So it's about understanding that at some point, if you're at a high all the time, or think that you should be at a high, at some point that you're going to crash.
Yeah.
And it's actually much more healthier to be in a consistent flow of actually understanding this, instead of thinking I'm being like a roller coaster in life, actually just being in a consistent sort of flow.
And I think consistency, but also ups and downs, ebbs and flows. We're going to have storms with this. If we go back to that sky metaphor, we're going to have storms, we're going to have sunshine, but we don't control that. We don't control the weather. The emotions come and go, negative, good. One will pass on and it will make room for the next one. Just knowing that the blue sky is always there above the clouds.
I love that analogy. The blue sky is always above the clouds, so it's okay to have the clouds, because at some point it's going to pass, and the sun's going to come through.
Yeah, it's going to pass.
Yeah. And lastly, I guess the only other thing, we spoke very, very briefly also on people may have heard the phrase, is it sympathetic and
parasympathetic? Yeah.
What's that?
Okay, sure. So we've got two parts of our nervous system in our body, and one is responsible for what we call the fight-flight response.
Yep.
Which is our, all guns blazing, let's survive in the face of danger. And, typically these days we don't actually have neighbouring tribes that are attacking us, or anything that's...
Thank goodness.
Threatening our physical well-being. But, I experience when I'm driving, let's say somebody cuts me off, all of a sudden I get the tingles through my legs. And
with that hot flush or whatever.
This is it, yeah.
So daily on the roads.
This is our nervous system. You're on the road a lot, aren't you? This is our nervous system doing what it needs to do. So it's pretty much like, I explain to people, that's pretty much like a light switch. The parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system, we flick the switch, and literally it sets off a whole bunch of chemical reactions in our body that prepares us for survival.
Is one good and one not good? No, they're both no?
If I was faced with a lion, I want to be in fight-flight mode.
Because you want to be able to defend yourself and run away.
Exactly.
And be okay.
Yeah, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but there's wonderful little changes, like the fact that my blood is more likely to clot and make me survive if I am in fight-flight mode.
Yep.
Than if I wasn't. So
why is that?
You're going to ask me all the science of it. Okay. So let me. What happens is, in fight-flight mode, the blood is pumped very quickly to our major muscle groups.
Yep.
And the major muscle groups feed oxygen and nutrients to all our cells so that we can run away or respond to the danger. And if you ever felt like the tingling in your fingers when you get in that anxious situation, that is the blood coming away from this area, so that if I do lose a finger in that situation, I'm probably more likely to survive if I'm in the fight-flight mode than I am if I wasn't.
Gosh, the human body's incredible.
Blood's sent to the right areas in our body for our heart to beat fast. Our mind changes the way it operates. Our perspective becomes narrowed, but actually it becomes narrowed in terms of looking at escape routes and survival.
It's interesting. So as human beings, like as you said, the researchers, going back to the very start, the researchers that have identified between 6 to 10 of these key emotions that we have. We need to understand that it's okay to not always be in blissful state of happiness. It's actually unhealthy to be in that frame of mind.
Exactly.
And the the best way to be able to deal with that on a daily basis is identifying what emotion are we feeling, to take that moment and actually take a breath, to be able to identify it, to name it. In naming it, that then soothes our brains.
Yes, lovely, yeah.
And then what does that do after that?
Yeah, so I think just to expand a little bit on something you said, that the noticing part, we talked a bit before about taking that breath.
Yeah.
And I think actually scheduling that time in your day, so you can say, you know, put a little alarm on your phone just to check in with yourself. So notice how you're feeling, name it, and by naming it, as you were saying, it validates how we're feeling, it acknowledges how we're feeling, which let's all be realistic. That's a nice place to be in, when we're acknowledging and naming how we're feeling.
Yeah.
And physiologically, it has a good effect as well. So it soothes that part of the brain that's at that time firing all these neurochemicals to say that we're feeling a particular thing. It soothes that part of the brain as well.
And as we were saying before, this is a technique and a skill that as adults, carers, parents, we need to be able to identify and I guess develop ourselves, but also to be able to teach children. And that, of course, because children's development up to the age of 5, it is best if we can try and develop this and have children understand to identify their feelings and to be able to name them from an early age. And it's fine, obviously, to keep doing this with children after the age of 5 naturally, but if you have children under the age of 5, this is something that is a very useful skill and technique. Look, we're really, really honoured to have this chat with you today. If you haven't read the whole article, we've actually got it in a link at the bottom of the description for this video. But if they've got any other questions or anything else, Sam, where can they get you?
So you're more than welcome to email me. We'll put my email address in the comments, and you can also head over to our website, which I think probably if you click on the article, you'll find a link to my website as well.
Thank you so much for your time today, Sam.
Thanks for having me, Rachel.
Oh, it's been a real honour. And other thing is too, if you've got any other questions by any means, you can put them in the comments here, and then Sam will be around for the next sort of 10 minutes or so. We can answer them. Thanks so much, and we hope this is a useful technique and a skill that everybody can use, as we said, at some point in their life. And thanks guys, take care, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.